It's Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Long Beach, and guess who's back? Don Knabe. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County, which we now know in November will be asked to vote on, we'll call it Measure R2, R2D2.
R2D2, yeah.
And what Measure R2 would do would extend Measure R, which passed in 2008, for another 30 years to raise, I guess we wouldn't be raising any more sales tax, just extend the raise of the sales tax.
Well, there's a short part that's an overlay that will increase it, but the big piece of this is the extension.
Okay.
40 more years.
Yeah, and so what we're looking to do is raise $120 billion.
That's
over,
with a capital B.
Yeah, capital B, a big capital B, over 40 years. What do you make of R2?
Well, what I make of it is, I mean, my biggest concern from day one was the geographic equity of those dollars and how they're spent. I continue to have that concern. And while all the details might not be out there yet, and we'll be going through in great detail, one of my concerns is the original hookup with the voters in 2008 was the fact that we said we're going to do this in the next 30 years. And some of those projects are now getting pushed back at the expense of R2. I think. I mean, I will validate that.
As we speak today.
I want to get my 2 cents out there up front because I don't want any pushback saying we didn't mention it. And the point being is there are 88 cities in this county and large unincorporated areas. I mean, the unincorporated area is equal to the second largest city in LA County.
Right.
So they all pay this tax. This is not a city of LA tax. This is 88 cities and the largest county in America. So don't kid yourself. This county is multimodal. That means car, it means bus, it means rail, it means ports, it means infrastructure, roadways. We have to do it all. And so that has to be spread out equitably throughout the region.
I want to talk about geographic equity because, as you know, in 2012, Measure J was on the ballot. And that would have done essentially what R2 is looking to do.
Almost identical.
Almost identical, more money. But it went down, and it barely went down. It got 66.11%. And why did it go down? The view was because the San Gabriel Valley didn't get money to extend the gold line, and there was a question of geographic equity. And when it's that close, that could have been the
Well, the other piece of that was North County as well, too. And North County felt very left out of this. I mean, and again, this is going to play out the same way. I mean, either the cities are going to be brought in and be at the table as it relates to the local return dollars and have some flexibility that this program goes bottom up and not top down, not being shoved down the throat.
How does it work, sir? Who decides what projects are included? Is it in the initiative itself, or is there discretion?
Oh, it's in the initiative itself.
And so who decides?
It's just not a $120 billion.
Of course.
It's very project specific, okay? But there's timelines, and this is where the geographic equity.
I see.
And this is where my concern is. Some of the projects that were in the original R1 are now being pushed out beyond R2.
Beyond R2. Even if R2, so 70 years.
So I mean, no, but I mean not beyond it. Within that, but I mean pushed out farther out into the future. Again, so that's where geographic equity comes in. I mean, my biggest push has been the connector to the airport, and we're moving forward on that. Well, I'll give you an example. There was original, I think, of 2032. We've pushed that up to where it's now 2023, but in R2 we're looking at 2024. So you just got to be careful. The cities are out there as it relates to how they get to spend their money, what kind of dollars they get. The other piece of all this is we need the green streets kinds of things where we deal with bikeways and walkways and those kinds of things, another important part. And it's really important to the cities. And they want some flexibility as to how those dollars are being spent, not having
Can we give them flexibility?
Oh, absolutely.
As part of the language of R2?
Absolutely. I mean, that's going to be a critical element because if you don't have the cities on board, it's going to be, again, tough. It may be close, but again, it's going to be tough. You look in the face of what may happen in November, okay? You're probably going to have anywhere from, depending on where you live, anywhere from 3 to 6 different taxes on there.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because
and bonds.
Yeah, we know that this November ballot will be very crowded. In California, we have the presidential election, we have a U.S. Senate race, likely 2 minimum wage initiatives on the ballot, marijuana legalization on the ballot. Long Beach has some bonds. I mean, up and down the state.
You got Long Beach Unified, you got Long Beach City, you got the City of Long Beach, you got Cerritos College. I mean, you've got a number. El Camino, I'm not sure about El Camino, they were talking about it. But I mean, there's a number of bond issues for various community colleges. So this is going to be a very competitive situation come November. And then on top of that, you've got the governor's issue where he wants to let more people out of jail.
But that's one way to spin it. But he does have a criminal reform measure on the ballot. Although is it still on the ballot? I mean, I guess it's up.
It's up in the air.
Yeah.
Right now.
But I want to go back, though, if I may, to this question.
By the way, I did spin it correctly.
Exactly. I want to go back to how R2 is structured, because we have seen surveys come out recently which indicate that folks aren't using public transportation as much as we thought they would. Why is that happening? Is it because public transportation is not convenient? Is it too expensive? Are we working at home? But it is of concern. I mean, should we be spending all this money to build all this, the subways and all these different type of lines if we're not using them?
We are using them. I mean, while some of the numbers as it relates to bus riders are down, like the Blue Line as an example, the ridership's up.
That's through here.
Through Long Beach and all the way to downtown. Right. Now you can, when the regional connector is done, you'll be able to get on to Long Beach, go all the way out to Azusa. Again, you need it. You need to provide the transportation. Can you imagine this region without some of the things that we've done, from the dedicated busways to the light rail to the heavy rail? I mean, we are multimodal. I mean, in my district alone, I've got both the ports. 40% of all the, it comes through those 2 ports. That's still a big issue, how you move that product into the rest of America. So these are all kinds of things that have to be delicately balanced. I mean, it'd be great if we could just build one route and everybody's happy, but we have 4,000 square miles we have to deal with.
Despite what one may think about high-speed rail, as we speak today, it looks like high-speed rail is moving forward. And so I want to get a sense, is R2 considering that and creating a situation whereby there can be linkages? Because I would hate to see high-speed rail and no linkages.
Well, I'd hate to see high-speed rail start in the middle of the state.
That's another conversation.
That's another conversation.
And now it's going north and not south.
Yeah. But I mean, now it's going north and not south. But from our perspective at Metro, absolutely, it's being considered. As you know, Metro, we now own Union Station.
Yes.
And so part of a major environmental piece will be to redo the paddock area to accept high-speed rail. Now, again, even if high-speed rail doesn't happen, we have the opportunity to do some other things with that space. But no, that's part of our process.
I want to talk about R2 and you. Have you endorsed R2? Do you plan on endorsing or opposing?
Well, at this particular point, again, it's going to be the devil's going to be in the details.
Which we need to review.
If we don't have geographic equity, and the projects get played games with, and it's all in the city of LA versus the rest of the county, I will oppose it, just like I opposed Measure J.
Right.
So I mean,
did you support Measure R?
I supported putting it on the ballot.
You did. Interesting. Now let's talk about your voters. You have a very interesting eclectic district, a purple district, I think it's fair to say. How do you think your district will look at Measure R2?
Well, again, I think depending on the routes. I mean, the South Bay's always felt very left out. Depending how we handle coming down Crenshaw into the airport, that's going to be huge. But then from the airport south. So you have very specific areas. How we use the dollars to really rework the infrastructure of the Blue Line so it's a reliable piece of transportation. I mean, it's heavily used, but you can't have people sitting out there with all of a sudden the electric wires. And so we've got a lot of infrastructure work to do besides all the new kinds of things.
Exciting times.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, the probability of transportation here in the next 30 years can be very, very exciting. And if it's done the right way, it's going to be great.
He is Don Knabe. He is the supervisor for Los Angeles County. I'm Brad Pomerance in Long Beach, Charter Local Edition.